Hi, my name is Lee Liming. I am the Director of Professional Services at Globus at the University of Chicago. The presentation is titled Transfer and Share Data on Access with Globus. And so I'm going to spend about 10 minutes explaining why this is a good idea, why you would want to transfer and share data on Access with Globus. And then I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes walking through it using our Globus web application to show you how to do all the things that I've explained to you. And then we'll have about 10 minutes left for questions after that. Before we get started with that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about who Globus is. Globus is a nonprofit service for research and education operated by the University of Chicago. So we are actually a department within the University of Chicago providing a service to the rest of the research and education community. Our mission is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of researchers engaged in data-driven science and scholarship through our sustainable software that our team develops and that we operate on behalf of the research and education community. So it's important to understand that our team measures its success based on what you are able to do in your research and education. And so it's very important for us that we provide a service that is useful and that reaches as many researchers and educators as possible. The Globus service was originally developed through grants and contracts provided by a variety of organizations, including the National Science Foundation, NIH, the Department of Energy, and others. And that happened mostly in the 2008 to 2011 timeframe. And we actually went online with our latest services in 2010. Since then, the Globus service has been sustained through subscriptions that we are given by institutions that are interested in keeping the Globus service running. So all of the institutions that you see logos on this screen and a bunch of others are people who provide each of them a bit of money to our team in order to keep the service running and in order to gradually add new features as they are needed by all of these organizations. While we're here, I want to say a special thank you to all of the access resource providers listed on this screen who are also subscribing institutions to Globus, and also to the Access Operations team, which has a subscription for this first year of the Access program. So all of these organizations have decided for themselves that Globus is an important enough service that it makes sense for them to help support it over time. And we are very grateful for that support. I wanted to say a little bit about Globus in the context of Exceed, which was the predecessor system to Access. Exceed ran for about 11 years from 2011 to 2022. And during that time, about 6,000 people used Globus with the Access resources that were available during that time frame. So that's what this number down here is, 5,995 when the slide was made. I'm pretty sure we got over 6,000 before Exceed was done. I wanted to highlight just a couple of these figures, though. There are a lot of numbers on this slide, but I wanted to highlight a few of them for you. First, we moved a lot of data during that time period. That when I say we, I mean Globus and the people who use Globus on Exceed systems. 81 petabytes is a very large amount of data. It's the size of a pretty hefty sized research computing system. And that was the data that all of these 6,000 people transferred on Exceed. That amounted to about 1.5 million successful transfers during those 11 years. And a number that I'm especially proud of is the 7,500 endpoints that were involved in Exceed transfers. Those are systems that were connected to Globus during that time that researchers who were using Exceed needed to move data to or from. So while there were about a dozen, maybe 24 resource providers that were connected to Exceed, There were over 7,000 other systems that people needed to move data to or from in order to do their research on Exceed. And we are really proud of the fact that so many different systems are connected to Globus and were used with Exceed. The other numbers that I wanted to highlight are numbers that talk about the size of those transfers. These 4 boxes here talk about terabyte plus transfers. What that means is that by pressing one start button, a researcher was able to transfer more than a terabyte of data in one shot. This happened, let's see, more than 12,000 times during the 11 years of Exceed. The largest transfer was just shy of 400 terabytes in one single shot. Click the start button and away it went. And it didn't stop until it was done. 500 of those 700 and the 7,500 endpoints were involved in terabyte plus transfers that exceeded a terabyte in size. So a lot of different systems around the world are capable of moving that amount of data in one shot. And of the 6,000 people who used Globus with Exceed, about 1 in 6 of them transferred more than a terabyte in one shot. And that's a pretty good number. That's a very large amount of data to move just with one click. It took a little while for each of those transfers to happen, but the researchers did not have to do much work after pressing that start button. They just waited for an email to show up in their mailbox and their data got where it needed to go. So looking beyond Exceed and Access, this is the global view. Globus is being used in more than 80 countries around the world. More than 400,000 people have used Globus in the 13 years that we've been running the service. There are more than 50,000 systems connected to Globus. And we are moving about almost 2 petabytes per day of data for the research and education community. So a lot of work is getting done using Globus. Since we started the service in 2010, we have transferred almost 2 exabytes of data. So that's 2,000 petabytes of data. We're very close now to reaching that 2 exabyte mark. We moved the first exabyte in the first 10 years of the Globus service, and the second exabyte is probably only going to take about 3 more years. 3 years from when the first one was done. So we're very close to that second exabyte, but it's only been 3 years since the first exabyte finished. So things are really picking up in terms of Globus's work that we're doing for the research and education community. So before I give you a demonstration that shows you how easy it is to use Globus, I'm going to talk through the process conceptually and show you what I will be showing you in a few minutes. It all starts out with a researcher like yourself or a student who has research data on a system that needs to be moved, in this case, probably to an access resource provider, where you've gotten an allocation to use some supercomputer at one of the access resource provider sites. And the first thing that you need to do is get all of the input data for whatever computing you're going to be doing to that system. So it shows here on the screen right now an instrument, but it doesn't have to be an instrument. You could have collected this data through a survey. You could have collected this data through a sensor network or any form of data acquisition. You could have had an instrument, indeed, at your campus, like a cryo-EM microscope or a gene sequencer. But the bottom line is that you've got data somewhere on a system that you need to, first of all, get to access. And so that is done very easily. That'll be the first thing that I show you in my demo, is how do you find your system on your campus and how do you find your access system in Globus, and then how do you tell it to move some data. One thing I want to point out about this is that on this simple slide, we show data going in one direction from the instrument to Access. There's absolutely no difference between the opposite direction, transferring data from the Access system, where maybe you've done some amazing computation or simulation or analysis, and you need to then move the data back to your campus or to your personal system, or maybe even on to the next system where the next phase of your analysis is going to be done. Doesn't matter. It's the same process. And it's easy. Another thing I wanted to note about this initial transfer is that you can also upload and download from your browser directly to either your campus system or the Access system. And that'll be probably the second thing that I show you in my demonstration, is how you just upload or download things from the system where you're running your web browser. And the third thing I wanted to mention about this is that these transfers don't have to be one-time things. You can actually set up Globus very easily without installing any software, just using your web browser, to perform the same transfer repeatedly using our timers feature. So, for example, if you're continuing to collect data on your campus system while you're doing your analysis on the Access system, you could set Globus up to repeat that transfer maybe every 6 hours or every 12 hours or every day or every week. And any new data that shows up over here will automatically get copied over here. You can do that using our sync feature and our timers feature, and I'll be showing you both of those as well. But once you get the data onto an Access system, it may very well be the case that you need an extra set of eyes on that data in order to know whether you're on the right track or not, or whether the analysis that you've done has produced good results or not. And so you may need to share that, or at least give a view of it to a colleague. You could, if you had a colleague that you trusted very much, add them to your allocation at Access so that they have the same rights and privileges to run jobs and access all of the data that you've transferred to Access. But you don't have to do it that way. Globus gives you another option where you can give limited access to things that you've got on an Access resource. And I'll show you that also in my demo, how you would share just a directory within your space that you've got on Access, and not all of the data that you've got there, just the things that you want to share with somebody. You would do that again using the Globus web app in your browser. Globus will do all of the sharing in place on the Access system. You don't have to copy it to Dropbox or to Box or Google Drive or anything like that in order to share it with your colleague. You can share it right where it is. So if the data is big, maybe it's a couple terabytes to 10 terabytes, doesn't matter. You can share it without moving it anywhere. Your researcher will then get an email that says, I've shared this data with you. Here's a link to it. They'll click that link, log into Globus, and access those files. They can either, just as you could do over here, upload and download them in their browser, or they could transfer them to another system that has Globus available on it. Okay, so that is all that I'm going to show you in my demonstration in a couple minutes. There are other things that you can do with Globus as well. We offer what we call platform as a service. We offer APIs and a command line interface and a software development kit that allow you to remote control all of the things that I described over here in shell scripts or in your own applications that you develop yourself. This is more than I'm going to be able to get into in this short webinar, but we hope to cover those in future webinars so that we can explain how you can build science gateways, web portals, and data publication systems, but not today. All right. The one thing that I did want to make sure is clear from this slide, though, is that everything I've described here can be done in a web browser. You can use your computer's web browser, or you can use a tablet, or you can even use your cell phone's, your smartphone's web browser, and do all of these transfers, setting up shares, and your colleague can access things. You can do uploads and downloads, even from a small device like a cell phone. Also, you do all of this with identities that you already have, your campus identities or your Access ID that you got when you registered with Access. So one last thing before we get to the demo, I want to explain some terminology to you. The first thing I wanted to let you know about is a piece of software called Globus Connect. Globus Connect is software that our team has developed, and it's available in two forms, a server and a personal version. This software is available for free. Anybody can download it and install it on a system. And what it does is it connects the data on that system to Globus so that you can then decide how you want it to be available in the Globus system for yourself and for other people. If you're working on your own system and it is a Mac system or a Windows system or Linux, you would probably want to install Globus Connect Personal. Globus Connect Personal runs just like any other app on your system, and it allows you yourself to interact with the data on that system using Globus. So you can do bulk data transfers. Maybe you have a very large amount of data that you need to move either from your laptop to an Access system or vice versa, and you want it to continue even when you move from work to home and back. And you can do that with Globus Connect Personal. The other flavor is Globus Connect Server. This flavor has to be installed on a Linux system, and it's intended for multi-user systems. So this would be something that your campus computing staff would probably install, campus research computing personnel, or the people who run the Access resources that you have access to. So you probably will not be installing Globus Connect Server yourself, although you can if you have a system and you have the expertise to run a Linux server. The last concept I wanted to make sure is clear before we move into the demo is that when you transfer data using Globus, your web browser talks to a web application that runs in our Amazon Web Services resources. So basically, we run a web application and you access it using your web browser. It works like any other application in that you can point and click and move things around and use the user interface, but it all is running in Amazon Web Services in Globus's space. When you interact with data on other systems, whether it's your campus system or an Access system, or even your own Globus Connect personal system, our web application reaches out to the Globus Connect software running on that system and gives you file listings and directories, lets you browse and things like that. But then when you click the Start button in Globus to actually do a transfer, the data goes directly from one Globus Connect system to another Globus Connect system, and it does not go through Globus at all. So while we can see things like file names and directory names on the system, we don't ever actually see the contents of those files. When you transfer something, it goes directly from the system you're transferring from to the system you're transferring to without going through us. And the transfer performance that you will get is determined by how good the networking between these two systems is. All right. I'm going to skip over this slide and go directly to the demo. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and start sharing my browser, if I can find it. There it is. So to get to our web app, this is the first thing you do with Globus. You would go to www.globus.org. This is the Globus website where you can learn all about Globus, but there's a button there called Login. I click the Login button and it takes me to our web app. This is an application that is, again, running in Amazon Web Services. The first thing you need to do is log in. You can log in using an identity from your university. There are more than 1,200 of these that are available already connected to Globus. You can also log in using Access, your Access CI ID. And when I do that, it will give me the Access login screen. You've probably seen this if you're using Access already. And I'm going to use my password manager to fill this in. I've already logged into Access today. Oh, no, it still wants me to do multi-factor. So I'm going to have to push a button on my watch to, let's see, verify your identity. Yes. All right, my multi-factor just worked. And now I'm logged into the Globus web application using my Access ID. All right. The first thing you're going to see on the screen when you log into Globus is the file manager. The file manager allows you to search systems that have Globus Connect installed on them and browse them. So the first thing I want to do is find a system that I have my allocation on. In this case, I have an allocation on the Anvil system. So I'm going to type in Access and Anvil, and hopefully it'll find it. Notice that there is one here called Access Anvil, and it has this green icon over here on the right that looks like a Greek temple. That icon is a clue to you that this is an official subscribing organization to Globus. And so there's a very good chance that this really is the real Access Anvil. There's another one down here that is somebody else's data that they have on Anvil. Doesn't have the green icon, so I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go to Anvil itself. This is Purdue's Anvil system. It drops me into my home directory where I have a couple of subdirectories and a bunch of data that I've collected on the Anvil system. So you can see that you can search and browse the files that are available on this remote system, just like you would in another file browser on your local system. Let's say that I have campus storage. Here's my campus storage at the University of Chicago. This is more like a projects directory at the University of Chicago, my research computing, and I have a directory called the Liming Lab at University of Chicago, and a bunch of data there. So now I can browse data over here on my Access system, browse data over here on my campus system. And if I wanted to copy something, all I would have to do is select it. In this case, this is a whole directory. Yeah, I can copy that, sure. And press this little start button here, and that will start a transfer. So doing transfers between Globus Connect systems is that easy. I get a little notification here that says that it started successfully. There was very little data in this directory, so it's probably done already. If I just click the restart, yep, it's already there. So it transferred the data, and oh, actually it was an empty folder. So bit of a cheat. If I wanted to take a look at any of the files that are here, I can do that very easily using Globus's upload and download feature. There should be files here. There we go. Okay. So here are some images. There's a icon here, the cloud with a down arrow that says download. And if I do that, it will download the file into my browser and I can open it. There it is. It's just a screenshot that I took a while ago. Actually, now that I think of it, you can't see that because I'm sharing the wrong thing. Hang on. Share. Nope. Oh, heavens. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. All right, and now I want to go back to my browser. Okay, and I want to go back to there. Downloaded it, and there's the screenshot. Okay, so you should be able to see that. Very quickly, go back. Firefox. There we go. Okay. Here. All right. Back to Globus. So you can see you can easily download files. You can also upload files. So if I wanted to add something from my computer here, I would just do the upload button, click continue, and I actually have to hit it twice, which is a little annoying, but there we go. Select files to upload, and it'll bring up a file browser on my own system. Here is a PDF of a report that the National Science Foundation put out. And voila, it's uploading into this directory on Anvil. So you can see it's very easy to use Globus to move files to and from your local system. And then you can use the start button to transfer to other Globus connected systems. The progress is almost finished, and voila, there, my report is now available on here. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I wanted to do a transfer that happened, let's see, on both of these systems, I have an incoming directory for incoming data. Let's say that I wanted to keep the data, I'm generating new data, wait a minute, I'm generating new data over here in this incoming folder on my campus, and I want to keep the copy that I have on Anvil updated over time. What I would do is I would set up what's called a timer. Notice that here it says transfer and timer options. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is say, I'm going to give a name to it, keep files on Anvil updated. Oops, updated. Okay. I'm going to do a sync transfer that only transfers new or changed files. And I'm going to pick only ones where the file size is different. So basically, anytime a file gets updated on my system or a new file appears, it will get transferred, and all the other files that were already there will not get transferred. So it'll only transfer new things. And then I go down to the bottom here, scheduled start. I'm going to say, when do I want these transfers to start? How about today? And how about, I don't know, let's say noon today. Oh, sorry, it doesn't like that because that time has already passed. Okay. I do want it to repeat. I want it to repeat every, I don't know, 12 hours. And I want it to end probably, oh, not after. No, I want by date. I want it to end 6 months from now. So for the next 3 months, I'm sorry, 3 months from now. So for the next 3 months, every 12 hours, it'll check on my system, the campus-wide research storage in the sequencer data directory, that Anvil, that incoming directory, and it will check this incoming folder, look for new things compared to the copy on Anvil, and start. Oh, it's going to ask me to authenticate again because I'm doing something special. In this case, starting a transfer. Yes, I do want you to operate a timer for me. Thank you. And timer request submitted successfully. So now I have a timer. And if I go to activity and look at timers, it'll say, oh, there's this timer that you just created. Let's see, is that it? Or was it this one? Keep files on, I think it was this one. Yeah, this was the one right here. Okay, here's all the data about that. It hasn't run yet at all because it hasn't been time for it to run yet. But when I come back here tomorrow, there should be 1 or maybe 2 runs of that transfer that have happened. So you can do that, okay? The next thing I wanted, or the last thing I wanted to show you was, let's say that I have data on Anvil and there's a particular thing that I want to share with a colleague, and it's in this directory right here. I can use this icon right here to share. I can create what's called a guest collection. Give it a name. A second. Let's see. Incoming scan for viewing by colleagues. I don't know. That's a silly name, but I'm just going to go ahead and call it that anyway. Notice that it's only sharing this particular directory, nothing else in my Anvil data. So it's very limited in what's being shared. And then by default, it's not shared with anybody. I have to actually add permissions if I want anybody to see. Right now, it's just being shared with me and the owner of the Anvil Purdue system. If I wanted to share, I would pick a group maybe that I've created. I actually have a group that I use for this purpose. It's called Lee's Collaborators. I'm only going to give read permission. I'm not going to let them change anything. They're only going to be allowed to view this data. And it will tell me it's done. Great. So now Lee's Collaborators has read access to this particular directory. Now, if you want to see how that would look, I can go over here and find the, let's see, incoming scan. Hopefully it finds it in the search results. There it is. So now I can tell my colleagues, okay, go into Globus and look for incoming scan for viewing by colleagues. Very bad name, sorry. And what they will see is just the contents of that directory. Notice that over here, it says /. They can't go anywhere else. They can't go anywhere else on Anvil. They can only see the one directory that I shared with them. And if they tried to change anything on there, they would find they don't have right permissions to that. So there we've gone over finding data on an access system, in this case, Purdue Anvil. Remember to look when you're looking for collections, look for these green icons that tell you that these are official Globus systems that are being operated on your behalf. We've seen how to upload and download files to them, how to set up a timer transfer that transfers things recurringly, and how to share data with the colleagues. We do have support resources. In particular, I want you to be aware of, we have a support email line, support@globus.org. But we also have documentation at docs.globus.org. There's lots and lots of documentation on all the things I mentioned. And we also have a YouTube channel. It's called Globus Online. And the last thing I wanted to mention before we go is that Globus World is happening in Chicago, April 25th through 27th. Globus World is a great place to learn about Globus and to meet with other people who are using Globus. And so I hope you will consider going to globusworld.org and registering either in person or online for Globus World. And if there are no more questions, I think we'll close the webinar. Thank you, everyone.